Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Historical Humans podcast. It is episode 30, which is yet another milestone for us, and what better way to celebrate it than to expand our team? My name's Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my usual co-hosts, Colum Coleman and Aaron Gilpin, and today we are introducing Caleb Graham, who is going to be our translator or our explainer. What that means is we're going to try something just a little different. And on that terrible note, let's go into it, eh?
Yeah, so we've introduced a Q&A section here, also known as Make the Researcher Cry. So, hello, my tears fuel this industry, apparently.
We understand that a lot of times we may go into chitter-chatter and talk about random topics and go way too in-depth. So we figured we might as well try and make it translatable.
Yeah. So
Listen, Caleb here. I love you all to death. You guys are so smart. You guys are going to teach me so much, and I'm so excited.
Yep. So
we're going to start with the House of Wisdom.
Yes. Today's subject is the House of Wisdom. Now, the House of Wisdom is located in Baghdad, Iraq, or it was for about 500 years, from the 8th century to the 13th century CE. So it is, it is the golden age of Islam. It is kind of most of the golden age of Islam, as the golden age lasts from the 7th century till about the end of the House of Wisdom in the 13th century. So this is sort of the pinnacle of achievement in that culture. It really is quite beautiful. It is sort of what defines an entire caliphate.
I mean, considering the amazing architecture that comes out of this time period, like the art, the philosophy, it's insane.
Yep.
I also find it very interesting. We talked about this very briefly before we jumped on, but I feel like right now is probably the best time to mention it, that this is also during a period in which Europe saw a lot of regression with its research and its information. So these centers of learning don't disappear. They just kind of transition and move and shift. Do you want to give your prime example from earlier, Colum?
Yeah, so throughout human history, the center of knowledge kind of shifts around, especially in what would be Western or European history. And it starts off, we start off with Athens in Greece, then moves to Alexandria, Egypt, then from Alexandria to Rome, Italy, from Rome to Constantinople in what is now Istanbul, Turkey, and then it goes to Baghdad, Iraq, before coming all the way back around to Toledo, Spain.
Oh no, not Toledo, Ohio.
Not the Ohio.
And Spain is about where we're going to end this, because that's about when the House of Wisdom stops being the House of Wisdom.
Yes, and question for you on the bottom row. Question.
Yeah.
So is it safe to say that throughout history, these institutes of learning and these areas of learning, they're all connected with one another, and they move and they're talking to one another. They're not just separate.
Not necessarily. What tends to happen is one place will rise up as a center of academic knowledge. It will last for several hundred years, and then tragedy will befall whatever civilization is supporting it, resulting in a sort of gap that is then, sort of filled by another prosperous society that begins to pick up the pieces of where they left off.
There's also a very condensed, explanation, because obviously the ancient world is very interconnected, especially even during the time of Athens. Athens was very connected with Egypt. A lot of knowledge came out of Egypt. And also it is only that's really just a Mediterranean focus. That's not including Asia, East Asia at all. So
or North America.
We have established earlier, when I was prefacing this transition from cities, that we were talking about European and Western history.
Yeah,
and
we did preface that,
just in case it wasn't clear.
But also the sword helps information transition too. The sword is very easy.
Justin, that's what we're saying. It's like there are basically, like, for example, Athens, rises up into the Delian League, becomes very prosperous, very big center of knowledge. Delian League collapses following the Peloponnesian War, and then with the conquests of Alexander the Great, Alexandria, Egypt is founded and takes on the role that Athens once had.
Okay.
Then Alexandria catches fire.
No, not the library.
The Roman Empire is in full swing. Rome has moved into Greece and Egypt at this point, and so they just take whatever has been left and put it in Rome. The western half of the Roman Empire collapses. The new capital in Constantinople takes over where Rome left off. Constantinople continues to grow. Constantinople kind of gets a little bit shaky because of economic terms, trades a lot of its stuff to Baghdad. Baghdad will found the House of Wisdom, and as the House of Wisdom, as Europe recovers, the House of Wisdom will then send things to Toledo to then be redisseminated into Europe.
And if you're playing Historical Humans Bingo, you can mark off the burning of the Library of Alexandria, because that seems to be a recurring topic.
We are here to talk about the House of Wisdom itself. So the House of Wisdom...
Which does burn.
Yeah, yes, thank you for spoiling. The House of Wisdom begins with...
It's been like how many centuries out of the spoiler?
The secret. Toilet Green is people.
All right. So who started this?
Begins with Caliph Harun al-Rashid, who ruled the Abbasid Caliphate from 786 to 809 CE. His dynasty is relatively new. It came into power in 750 following a major revolution against the ruling Umayyad dynasty. And as a result of their success, they moved the capital of the caliphate from the Umayyad capital of Damascus to their own new city of Baghdad, which they proceed to lavish on for several generations. This Baghdad was chosen because it was the perfect place for a crossroads between Europe, Asia, and the Islamic world.
Not to mention Fertile Crescent.
Yeah, but the Abbasids wanted this place here because they wanted to draw from the knowledge of all the world. They were a people who believed in multiculturalism. They were people who believed that ethnicity wasn't really your defining factor. Religion wasn't your defining factor. That they knew that all these civilizations out there exist because the people in them are at the very least capable of surviving in their own territory.
So they're pushing very progressive policies of equality and
low key.
Yeah,
it's even they say one of the first, well, I guess like an honorary early anthropologist, so to speak, is Ibn Fadlan in his travels, because he was commissioned to go into the quote unquote land of darkness, and it's one of the more unbiased as you can be, obviously, takes of the surrounding areas, not just in the Kievan Rus, but also of the steppes.
Yeah, and there is a lot of that. I don't know if Ibn Fadlan is Abbasid or Ilkhan.
I believe he's part. It was Abbasid.
He might. All right, so he probably is Abbasid. I'll take your word on that. The other thing that gets the Abbasid dynasty really going on this knowledge train is they're one of the first people to adopt paper, which has just recently been invented in China. It's way cheaper and way quicker to make than papyrus and parchment, which is what everyone else had been using to that point, which means for the first time in human history, you can amass a lot of written works very easily.
Could you imagine, though, the early adopters, like, traveling along the Silk Road with flyers in hand of written works advertising paper? Like, check out this great new material. You can write right on it. You see, it's an advertisement telling you to buy our paper.
Well, we could do that with papyrus and parchment. What makes this different? It's lighter.
And it costs less money.
So old
Cheaper,
guys who were
perfect.
Like, a bunch of old guys who are like, nah, why do we need this new stuff? We got it good on
Kids
whatever they
these
had
days
before.
don't know the good feeling of parchment.
The Abbasids are a new dynasty looking to define themselves, which means that unlike most established
They're ready to experiment.
rulers, they are looking for something new, something to make themselves seem modern and powerful. And so Harun al-Rashid establishes the House of Wisdom as the Library of Wisdom. He names it Khizanat al-Hikmah, the library, because it was a collection of his father's and grandfather's books that were housed in this place. It was just the royal family's personal collection of books that were housed there. And the emphasis was multilingual works of science and art. So this is very much it's all the works of knowledge that his family had accumulated over the past like 3 generations.
That's really cool, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's a very fun thing, and it's not until we get to his son, Caliph al-Mamun, who is someone we really, as archaeologists and historians, and just the human race in general, need to be so grateful that he inherits the throne and not his brother.
Oh no, why?
Because Caliph al-Mamun, he's the son of Harun al-Rashid. He rules from 813 to 833. Now, Harun al-Rashid dies in 809. And the 4 years between the rule of al-Rashid and al-Mamun consists of al-Mamun's brother trying to murder him in a bloody civil war for the throne.
I've heard that story before.
Yeah, that sounds really familiar. I think there's a few TV shows about it, maybe.
Yeah, it's a thing that happens constantly. Now, al-Mamun is an A grade nerd. All right, al-Mamun
yes, a nerd one.
he loves science and art and knowledge, and not only does he go into the Library of Wisdom, as it is known at the time, and expand it, but he would regularly go in and just talk with the current scholars in residence. This is effectively the equivalent of the President of the United States having a standing appointment with every department in Harvard.
That's really cool.
So
to be fair,
the political equivalent of what that man did.
I honestly, I can't really blame him, because honestly, if I was like in charge of a country and I was like basically the sole patron of an entire academy, I'd just show up randomly and be like, "Hey, what's up? What are you doing?" And just be looking over their shoulder and just be like, "Oh man, that looks kind of cool.
Oh, that's real cool."
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Caleb, you had a question?
Yeah, so this was more of a like, I'm here to learn and take what you're knowledgeable in. It wasn't kind of like it was like altruistic. It was like, hey, I'm ready to learn from you guys.
He was very into it. He wanted to discuss the latest research in any of the fields that were there. He loved science. His favorite I don't know what his favorite science was per se, but he was very interested in research. He wanted more research. He goes so far out of his way to accumulate research that it is rumored that he would pay you in the weight of each book you translate into Arabic in gold.
Wow.
Oh man!
If you translated Herodotus' histories from Greek to Arabic, you would receive the weight of that book in money.
Oh, God, I wish.
I'm gonna I would have made like such a heavy cover for the book. Yeah. I would have definitely been.
That is definitely a trick. That's in part why this is a rumor, but this is something that got around, and it helps draw a lot of scholars in, because if I'm multilingual and I have all these works from my home country, I can get paid a ton of money to sit in a room, translate them for you, and now not only does the House of Wisdom have all this knowledge that it wouldn't otherwise have, but I am a very well-paid academic.
Which
the only
is
time
rare.
in history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty. Wouldn't
Yeah.
you know? It's the 8th century, the last time
But
an
see-
academic was well paid.
I do
Ninth
like
century, because we've made it into the 9th century for the reign
Okay.
of Al-Mamun.
I do like that the building expanded from being just a library to actually becoming an academy, and
yeah.
being able to start producing these works themselves on top of just housing them. I think
Oh.
that's a really big distinction between the two, and it becomes
yes.
the blueprint for a lot of universities afterwards.
Okay,
Yeah,
so like
because
they're doing a bunch of translations and stuff, but like, what kind of science are they doing?
Well-
Are they doing like physics science, or are they doing like metaphysical
They're
science? like
doing
philosophy.
philosophy, science, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, astrology, literature.
Yeah, there are about 9 or 10 different branches of science, each of which, under Al-Mamun, gets its own separate wing and gallery dedicated just to housing works of that type and for research of that type.
This really
God,
sounds
I
like a
would-
university.
He renames it to Bayat al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, and in 829 he puts an observatory on top of the building to track stars and celestial movements.
Well,
Which-
if there's anything that part of the world loves, it's domes. Looking at you, Constantine.
But like astrology was considered one
Justinian.
of the like highest scientific fields. It was the pinnacle. So to have an observatory was like
Yeah.
literally Oxford or Harvard going, of course we're one of the most prestigious universities in the world. We've got a secret cult. And everyone
We're in
goes,
fact-
yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, there was a what now?
We're in fact the only university in the world. Yeah, no, Justin is being facetious here. So, at the time, up until basically Copernicus, the science of astrology is considered an actual science. There was ideas that various celestial movements had direct impact on the mortal plane. They do not. However, the thing that was studied alongside astrology, which was astronomy, very scientific, and that was also utilizing this observatory for its purposes. And there was, a lot of good knowledge coming out of this. A lot of
Sister
star movement
sciences.
being tracked. There was a lot of good scientific, mapping of the sky going on, which is the important work that this observatory did.
Honestly, you're such an Aquarius for saying that.
I'm not an
Oh,
Aquarius.
jeez. That's a different kind of astrology. Anyways, speaking of
so-
that, it drew scholars from all sorts of faiths, ethnicities, from all across the Muslim world.
Anything and everything is studied here, and because anyone and everyone is studying here, the House of Wisdom, Baghdad, the Abbasid dynasty becomes this symbol of intellectualism and multiculturalism. You have people from everywhere working side by side in the same building towards the same goal.
Why does that sound very familiar?
And this is the way of the Abbasid Caliphate. Much of its architecture is a combination of things from multiple cultures in the area, making
I know we make a lot
arches.
of jokes.
geometric artwork on the walls. This is
Seriously, all of you need to look at like the audience,
Colonnades.
including Caleb. I'm gonna look at Caleb too. All of you need to look up some of these like geometric designs that come out from like
It
this
is.
period. Some of the best some of the best preserved ones are actually in Spain.
So,
yeah, so the best preserved in Spain. There are some beautiful ones in Sicily too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, Sicily. Oh, the island ones are beautiful because like, hey, look at that. We have a sea breeze. Let's open everything. But yeah.
Caleb, you were trying to ask something and
yeah,
kept
so
getting cut
like,
off.
so yeah, so it seems like the multiculturalism, having people from all over and different cultures and stuff, really seemed to like, boost the House of Wisdom up, because you're taking the best of the best from all over. It's not very like, it's not just one place, one type of people. It's all types of people, right?
It's the House of Wisdom. It is meant to be the place of all people and all knowledge, because everyone knows something.
Wait,
and
this
if we have everyone, we will know everything.
This
That
reminds
is
me of the library from Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Oh yeah.
where you have to bring a
That
book
is-
in.
That is Yeah, that is an imitation of this. That is probably what that is paying homage to, a library hidden in the middle of the desert.
I should
That requires knowledge for entry. The House of Wisdom didn't require knowledge for entry. Usually when you're in the House of Wisdom, that's when you start generating more knowledge.
it should also be noted, like, just because this is a Muslim caliphate that's existing in the Middle East is not like some uniform area by far. Even when they talk about when you get into the era of the Crusades, there were already Christians living in that area, and Jews as well. It's not a cookie cutter place, or well, not cookie cutter place, but more of a. It's not a uniform place. It's very diverse already, so there's no reason to exclude an entire religious or ethnicity group for them to be there.
And keep in mind, the House of Wisdom is also drawing from China and India, which are none of those religions. So this is trying to draw people in from everywhere, and a big part of that leads to some major scientific discoveries that we end up still using today. For example, one of the most famous alumni of the House of Wisdom is a man known as Al-Khwarizmi. He is an Arabic mathematician who wrote a book titled The Book of Restoring and Balancing. This book is what invents the field of algebra.
Oh, just burn the place down. That's too much. That crosses a line.
He created algebra. In fact, the word algebra comes from his Arabic title of the book, because the Book of Restoring and Balancing is the English translation. The Arabic name is Kitab al-Jabra wal el-Muqabbala. I am butchering that last part for sure, but it's, algebra is the second word of the title.
Interesting.
So this is the man I have to beat up.
Yeah, like if there's a point to go back in history and slap someone.
This book is also the reason why the number 10 is 1 and 0 and not the letter X. Because it also defines the Arabic numerals as a mathematical method that then gets adopted by Europe.
Wait,
this
so
is the reason why we use a base 10 system, right?
This establishes the foundation of math.
So this is the guy who spent decades looking for his ex.
Okay, that's bad from the side. Also, if you're going to do that, please attack Pythagoras first. Pythagoras is the father of geometry. Khwarizmi is the father of algebra.
Who's the father of trigonometry? I really need to fight that guy.
Also Pythagoras.
Oh, well, I'm going to kick some Greek ass.
Yep. A second major scientist, there are too many to list out or to hunt down, so I only have, one or two here, was a man who, I just love his name, Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi, who was a medical doctor who wrote 200 medical treatises at the house. This man published 200 books.
Like how many years?
In his lifetime.
I'm assuming more than one a year. I don't think he lived to 200.
Yeah,
I doubt he's physically writing them himself, though.
Most people can physically write about one book every few years. This ranged from a pamphlet on toothaches to a medical handbook that was in use until the Enlightenment.
Is this where we get the humors thing from, like the four humors, or is that
the four humors goes back to Hippocrates? This guy went much further than that. He's also one of the first people to have rudimentary tests of germ theory, because he located the most sanitary place in which to build a hospital by going around Baghdad and hanging meat in the middle of squares and measuring the rate of decay in each piece of meat, thus noting which places were more prone to decay and thus sickness, and which places weren't.
Interesting.
He did not know what was causing it or why, but this is the same principle that will establish germ theory with John Snow of London. not Jon Snow of the Wall.
I mean, that's not a bad idea. I mean,
This is
And speaking of Jon Snow of the Wall, this whole everything you guys have been talking about has just been reminding me of the Citadel and Old Town, just the scholars who are there and just dedicate their lives to learning. That's kind of what this is resonating for me, at least.
Yeah, this is yeah, I can't speak to what inspired George R.R. Martin, but yeah, this is this is basically the whole purpose of the House of Wisdom is knowledge. And
what do I wonder? What do you think? So I understand they would have probably discussed philosophy. What about religion? Would they have discussed religion in this place too, or was that just strictly only Muslim faiths?
I don't know what they really did in terms of religious study here. I know philosophy was discussed, and a lot of ethical and moral philosophy tends to have religious components, especially from this time and earlier and later. So I assume that there would have been moral philosophy going on here as well. They would have drawn from the Greek tradition a lot. The House of Wisdom is actually a Hellenophile. As it was a major meeting place for translators, scientists, scribes, copyists, authors, all these people who wrote things, and they primarily wanted to translate Greek works into Arabic, but they also drew, even though they also would draw works from Farsi, Aramaic, Hebrew, Syriac, and Latin. They primarily wanted Greek authors.
Gee, I can't imagine why.
They liked the Greeks so much that they actually went out of their way to arrange loans from the city of Constantinople and its libraries for copying purposes.
Why
People
does
would go
everyone
from
emulate?
Iraq to Constantinople to basically borrow a book. Talk about long distance lending.
Is this the start of the interlibrary loan?
This
It
is
just arrives
probably,
on cable.
Oh yeah.
This is this is basically the same idea behind it. It's like, hi, we have this big library. You have these libraries. Will you let's borrow some books for like 10 years?
I mean, yeah, if you're gonna travel that far, at least keep it for a while.
Yeah, 8 for the journey, 2 to actually use it.
See, now I would do like a scholar exchange program where you send a bunch of scholars and their job for like 2 years is just to copy as many books as possible, and then they have to try and haul it all back with them.
Yeah,
I mean, I could probably see it.
Yeah.
I'm sure scholars probably like went to some places.
Oh yeah, 100%. And like there was no photocopying, there was no taking a picture with your phone. Like you had to write everything down.
Yeah, and the purpose of translating everything into Arabic was so that the people of Baghdad, who primarily spoke Arabic, and the Abbasid Caliphate, which primarily spoke Arabic, could read and debate it.
Debate it?
Yes. You could. That's how new knowledge is made. Is basically, I have here Hippocrates. I have read Hippocrates. I think Hippocrates is really good at X. I think we should look at X more.
Well, you think
And
Hippocrates is important? Let me tell you about Socrates.
That's kind of how it was done. And the purpose of turning everything into Arabic, translating everything into Arabic, was so that the people in Baghdad could have much more readily available text to them. Because more people are going to
learn.
More people are going to know Arabic in Baghdad than are going to know Latin or Greek or any of the other languages. Hebrew. More people are going to. It's just to make the works more accessible.
But see, that's you see a lot of emerging patterns from this system that I think are very beneficial and I think have truly stood the test of time. I mean, we've made jokes about how this very much is like a library and is very much a prototype for what we consider modern higher education universities, but this truly was like a way to modernize your population and to educate them, which at this point in time, education wasn't very easy to come by. It was very class restricted in a lot of places. So to democratize education like that is huge, but I think there is also still that barrier of entry of
there,
being
there is
literate.
there is a major barrier. However, the concept of putting works into vernacular is something that doesn't catch up to Europe for like another 600 years. For example, most works of academic text up through Copernicus, who is much later, you write those in Latin. It doesn't matter that you speak Polish or German or French or English. You write only in Latin, and thus, even if you can read and are intelligent, unless you have had access to Latin, you cannot learn anything knowledgeable.
I would like to also.
What this is doing is removing that barrier of, hey, learn a foreign language. Nope, everything is going into the local language.
I would like to also add that even though scholarship was very much flourishing during this time period, by the time it's the high medieval ages in Europe, most scholarship is definitely through the church. So most scholarship is more theologically focused, whereas like out here in the House of Wisdom, it's definitely more like a proto-scientific method, like observation wise at least.
Yes, but like up until like the times of like Charles Darwin and people like that, even if you were performing biology or botany or something that is very scientifically based, you are still writing it in a language that no one else in your country speaks except for fellow wealthy academics. Which means that no one else who reads can read this but you.
See, I hate writing in Latin because I just keep accidentally summoning demons. Like one spelling error and you're in trouble.
No.
It usually just means whether you use. It's usually more of you just use the wrong context. Like instead of using the ablative, you've now turned it into a nominative case.
You mean the Necronomicon isn't?
Right. Enough literary bullshit for the time being. Enough conjugation. There are some very famous translators who come to the House of Wisdom. Some very fun ones. The first is Al-Kindi, who translates most of Aristotle. Aristotle is the father of sort of Western education and philosophy. So he is a very big deal to have. And, like I said earlier, the House of Wisdom is very much a Hellenophile, so they loved getting their hands on anything that the Greeks did, which is why it's a big deal when Johanna ibn al-Batrik al-Turjuman finds and translates Aristotle's Book of Animals, which is something that Al-Kindi did not get a hold of. And it's, it's a very big deal, like, oh my God, there's another Aristotle, insert feeding frenzy. There are quite a few more of these guys, too. For example, Hunyun ibn Ishaq translates Hippocrates, who is the father of Western medicine. And, again, they are drawing from Constantinople, so a lot of the works they have access to come from that Greco-Roman tradition, that Greek literary canon, because Constantinople is currently the government over Greece.
Greece, Anatolia, yeah.
Following the Roman conquests and the fall of Rome, Constantinople is the capital of Greece.
Still technically Rome, but that's a different debate.
Fall of Rome.
Still,
Constantinople does not control Rome. Rome fell and burned. Yes or no?
Rome is here. It's not a place. It is here in the hearts.
You are so deluded.
14.
Before we kill each other, the House of Wisdom is what, as Constantinople itself goes into decline, the Byzantine Empire does slowly die. This House of Wisdom Baghdad keeps all the literary traditions that Constantinople was holding on to alive. It keeps European literature, science, and history intact during the period in which Europe is basically falling apart and Constantinople is kind of its last bastion, is just a light slowly, dwindling out.
It's also just kind of a good thing to point out that usually when these places fall, their literary works and their sciences either tend to go on the back burner or tend to be one of the first forays into the destruction. It kind of goes to either end of the scale, but it's never positive for research.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost as if violence is very bad for scholarship.
I can't imagine why that is.
Yeah, I can't
As
imagine.
as if a few conventions haven't started fistfights.
Yeah. Q Lindisfarne all over again. Just we're an island of scholarly monks. Yeah, you also have money. Everyone is now dead.
You have shiny trinkets and they're ours now.
Yeah. So much fun. So another big thing with the House of Wisdom is it is responsible for a very important invention called the astrolabe. This is an astronomical instrument that was adapted from Greek theoretical texts. The Greeks theorized that a device would be capable of doing what an astrolabe does. House of Wisdom actually builds one.
Dang, that's a flex and a half.
Yeah. It is a handheld model of the universe that so basically it's like a compass you can hold in your hand. It's a model of the entire celestial universe around the Earth, and supposedly it had over 1,000 uses for things from navigation to astronomy to geometry. Like this thing was the navigator and architect's like Swiss Army knife. You could do just about basically the astrolabe looked at every tool in existence and said, anything you can do, I can do better.
The Swiss Army knife would like to know your location.
Yep.
Wait, was that its poster on the wall of like what it aspired to be? I will do what the astrolabe did, but I'm gonna do it better.
But I'm not gonna do it for nerds.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it to be cool. I'm gonna have knives and files, and some will have toothpicks.
Yeah, basically it was every scientific measuring instrument in one, which is massively impressive, especially given the fact that you could carry it.
How do you cram so much info into one device?
So, like, this is, like, obviously, like, pretty much the center of the Muslim world, essentially, at this time, right? Or at least knowledge-wise. But, like, obviously, this can't be the one place. Like, what about, there are, like, other places? I know you mentioned, like, Toledo, Spain.
Yeah.
Well, Al-Dusinia at the point.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, there is, So there is imitations throughout the Muslim world. So the House of Baghdad gets going in the early 9th century. And because it's the personal pet project of one of the few intellectual kings in history, Al-Mamun, it spawns numerous other libraries and learning centers throughout the 9th and 10th century because, one, this is what the Caliph likes. So if we have what the Caliph likes, he will come and give us more money. Number two, even though that Caliph is dead by the 10th century, hang on, this is actually pretty profitable for the city. We're attracting trade, we're attracting foreigners, we're attracting scholars. It boosts our prestige, and the scholars, surprisingly, tend to have some pretty useful things to say on architecture and city planning and, storing food so it doesn't rot and medicine. Like, this is actually pretty good for our city.
Why is this every small town in America with a university in it, though?
This is every small town in the Muslim world with a university in it. This is what that did.
Hey, having these nerds here is really beneficial. They actually know how to get shit done.
It's like, well, then the nerds came, and now we've got better tractors. And the indoor plumbing is a real benefit.
You mean I don't have to shuck my waste out the window no more?
Yeah. No, you still do if you live on that side of town. We can only add the sewage system on the new part that we built.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are two of major major exception, like two that stand out outside of Baghdad as like being these beacons of light for different reasons. The first is Dar al-Hikmah of Cairo. which was built in the early 11th century. It only lasted about 65 years, and it was built by the Caliph al-Hakim, and it was sort of another major learning center. This one got big very quickly. However, things go wrong fairly quickly in the 12th and 13th century. The golden age of Islam is still in effect. However, we are in its final years, so things this sort of thing was so late to the party that it pops up, gets really big, and then collapses.
Mild regression.
Which is naturally bound to happen. I mean, by the time of the Dar al-Hikmah of Cairo, the House of Wisdom has been going strong for 300 years. By the time it's built, by the time it collapses, the House of Wisdom has been going on for almost 400. So it's like you had a golden age longer than the entire history of the United States of America. The time has come for the curtain call.
Yeah, this is how we measure history, guys. By how long the U.S. has been established.
Yeah. By how many USAs are you?
We are American, if you couldn't tell by our vernacular and our accent. So we will refuse to use any sort of measuring system, including the metric system. So we will use our own. So we are using USAs as a metric of time.
Just like we use our football fields as a unit of measurement.
Anything but the metric system. That's our rule.
Literally.
We will measure. We will measure in pints. We will measure in cups, but we will not measure in liters.
I love the memes that go around. Like, there was one out of Colorado that was like, a large boulder the size of a small boulder fell on the road.
Yeah, it weighed 2 stone.
Oh, and you say I make bad puns. God.
No, stone is actually a measurement of weight.
I know it is. That's why it's a bad pun.
But the other big center is in Toledo of Andalusia, which is Muslim-controlled Spain. This is pre-Reconquista by about 400 years.
Casual.
Give or take. This one was built. Yeah. This one was built in the 12th century CE. So this is like the last bastion of the golden age of Islam, and this is where the Europeans, because the Spanish Peninsula is the one place where the Arabs and the Christians have neighboring kingdoms that also don't totally hate each other. Like, they still hate each other, but it's not constant warfare.
Yeah, it depends it kind of depends on the time of the century. Like, sometimes they're usually really chill. Other times they're like,
this isn't. But it's not like Ottomans and Byzantines, where it's like every time there's a new sultan, we go to war. This is there are actual periods of peace on the peninsula, and because of that, Christian Europe rediscovers all these Arabic translations of ancient European texts, which prompts Toledo to become this massive center as all these books migrate out of Baghdad into Toledo to be translated from Arabic back into Latin.
I could not imagine how awful some of those games of telephone were. Like, trying to read the translated version.
Welcome to hell.
Okay.
It's basically what happens when you type a sentence into Google Translate, put it through like 10 languages, and then put it back in the original language and see what's changed.
Yeah. Most of the works of Arabic were works that were originally translated in the 9th century by the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Most of the works that come out of Toledo back into Europe.
I'm convinced this is how we got the King James Bible.
It really isn't, but also
no, because the King James Bible is, my name is James of England. I have decided that I no longer like Catholicism or Latin. Therefore, I will be editing the Bible to reflect my own worldview and then translating it into English.
And then he helps lead probably one of the largest witch hunts in Europe.
Yeah. This is a far more benevolent act, and also far more knowledgeable than King James. Nothing against the King James Bible or
I have a
Anglican
few.
religion.
I purely
but-
just said that to trigger Colum, for the record.
Like
'Cause-
but the idea that the two acts of translation are comparable is simply not so. Plus, this is an instance of a language going out of a vernacular and into an elite language. So this is no longer, Arabic it's no longer in a language that's going to be spoken by the people of the countries to which this is going. It's now in a language spoken only by the educated elite.
Hate those guys.
So we're heading towards the end here. What causes the end?
So
It couldn't be the Mongols.
and the biggest reason why Toledo is a big success is not just because it brings all this work from Europe and the Middle East and Asia into Europe or back into Europe in the case of the European works. It's not just because it brings it back. It's also because it's what saves all this knowledge from total destruction. For you see, a man named Caliph al-Mustasim, last of the Abbasid caliphs, takes the throne. And in 1258, he is killed during the Mongol sacking of Baghdad by none other than a man we have talked about previously on this show, Hulegu, grandson of Genghis of the Khans, who, when he gets to the city of Baghdad, decides that all must burn.
Oh, come on.
Which follows with the great Khan's philosophy of, if any city resists us, the city shall cease to exist. And Baghdad resisted.
We talked about how good the Khans were, how they incorporated local people, but we went one episode without talking about the Khans sacking a city. One episode.
I mean, it's not like the Khans were going to be in Antarctica.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been surprised.
That's what you think. The Mongol horse lord comes over.
There's just a long lost.
It's all open plains.
The lost tribe.
It's all open plains. Once they crossed the ocean, it was their territory.
It's when the Mongols tried to invade Japan, the typhoon just sent them to Antarctica.
Okay,
yes.
this is my new conspiracy theory: the Lost Horde.
Yep. So, it is not the end of life in Baghdad, however, because Hulegu establishes the Ilkhanate dynasty of Iran on account of his relationship being the brother of Monkey Khan, the reigning Khan at the time of the sack.
Oh,
Monkey Khan, yes. Monkey Khan is the man technically in charge when this happens, even though it is Hulego's campaign and thus Hulego's discretion as to what does and doesn't burn. Now, when Hulego, in the sacking of Baghdad, comes to the House of Wisdom, he sees a big, beautiful building filled with books and orders every written work in it to be dumped into the Tigris River. Every scholar in the house is massacred, and the river Tigris is reported to have run black and red with ink and blood for days on end from all the books that were dumped in the river and all the scholars that were slaughtered trying to stop them.
Wow.
It's the first time the river has run black.
That is
at least until
poetic
we start polluting it.
Yeah. It is very poetic, but what do you expect? You murdered all the scholars. The poets are going to the poets are going to salute their own.
A world without scholars is a poet's heaven.
The poets are going to give a 21-gun salute to the fallen scholars.
That's
Except
when the poets and the
it's
bards.
A string of a liar.
Well,
yeah, keep in mind, at least one of the galleries in the House of Wisdom was dedicated to literature. So the poets lost as much as the scholars when this place got hit.
They just have that sick sense of humor to just make it beautiful as it goes on.
Well, I don't think it's the sense of humor making it beautiful. I think the point is, to pull off a 21-gun salute as as the entire, empire dies.
Honestly, there's no better way for a poet anyway. I mean, honestly, they're gonna make it as dramatic as possible.
They are, but man, that they hit the nail on the head with that one. The sword in the hilt.
Yep. That.
So
And, Baghdad is destroyed. It is
Oh.
it is a ruin. After Hulegu leaves it.
So Caleb, I actually did want to ask if you how do you feel? Like, is there any questions? Like, what do you think?
I do. So with the destruction of Baghdad, you obviously said that there was just nothing. It was just completely and utterly destroyed. So like all this wealth of knowledge, like at least some of it made, like we still have some of this knowledge, right? Not from obviously the House of Wisdom, but through all the trading and like the book loans and the transcriptions, correct?
That's
Yeah,
where Toledo
Yes,
really...
we have this knowledge thanks to the fact that Toledo had
Not
copies
alive.
of a lot of the works from the House of Wisdom that were being translated by Europeans to be taken back to Europe, and thus Toledo had a abnormally large amount of scholarly work in it at the time when Baghdad gets axed.
The ancient world was very much interconnected again, so it's not that surprising that
So
like surviving
Toledo,
works.
so Toledo had like a backup save, and
Pretty much.
like we're thankful for that.
Yeah, the main hard drive
we're
crashed.
thankful that we're thankful that in the 12th century, about 100 years prior to the sacking, Europeans started to take an interest in what all these houses of wisdom and houses of learning had in them. And that got a lot of work sent to Toledo, which was sort of the nearest jumping off point between Christian Europe and the Muslim world.
Outside of like Sicily, but listen,
But like no one wants to ship to islands. It's just much easier to hop across the strait than it is to ship across islands.
Plus, I mean, at that time, Europe was very busy with slaughtering their own academics, so they had to figure out what information these guys knew, just without having to deal with them.
I mean, I wouldn't say so much slaughtering, more making sure they're in line with the church.
And the other key point to make with it too is unlike Arabic Sicily at the time, Arabic Spain is not under immediate threat of attack by overzealous Catholics, on account of the fact that Arabic Spain is not on the front door of the literal Pope.
Yeah, but the Catholics come in later.
I mean, the Catholics were already there.
Yeah,
There's just this little thing called the Moorish invasions.
Yeah, well, the key too is just what I'm trying to say is Toledo and Spain was doing better economically and militarily than Sicily was at this time.
Yeah,
Thus,
Sicily was
Toledo was in a better position to trade knowledge.
Yeah, so you got like the Lombards, you got the Byzantines, and then at some point the Normans kind of show up, and so
but yeah, Sicily is kind of sitting out there in the middle, going, "What the hell is happening?" Also, I believe the Knights of Malta have just moved in next door.
Oh, jeez.
Sure,
at least
they
they're
won't
not
be
the
a
Knights of
thorn.
Knee.
Yeah. So Sicily is in a somewhat precarious position despite still being held on to by the Muslim world, whereas Spain, Arabic Spain is going strong.
Yeah, it's despite the various moments of Reconquista, there's generally lots of peace. Like, this is an area where multiculturalism is flourishing because they kind of have to.
Yeah.
Well, and I do also want to kind of branch off that discussion for a little bit, because I think one of the things that we hit on a few times but really makes this quite an important topic is the fact that this knowledge always perseveres, it always transcribes, and it's very interesting. We make a lot of jokes about academics, but these houses of knowledge where these people come together and they bring forth new ideas, like this is where a vast majority of our current information comes from and is stored. So like the importance of this, especially while other parts of the world were in a lot worse states, like it's really important, because if the tradition wasn't alive in the Middle East, we could have been significantly further stunted.
This is the point of this is this is where a lot of this was kept, and it was kept safe for 400 years. So this is you break any link in the chain of these cities that preserve knowledge, and we as the human race lose almost everything. Fortunately, after the works get out of Toledo, not only is has paper been around long enough to make books commonplace, especially among the elite, but we're not too many centuries off from the printing press.
I was just thinking that too.
At which point it becomes physically impossible to destroy knowledge outright on account of the fact that it is everywhere. It is no longer one or two major cities and institutions holding on to everything for the sake of everyone else. It is now able to be disseminated rapidly everywhere.
I'm sure that won't cause any issues.
And that key right there, no, it creates social issues, but it means that there is no longer, we're no longer as a species one major evasion away from entire continents losing millennia of history.
Well, I think that's a good place to end it there. I think that's
This is the House of Wisdom, yep.
Also, I did want to, real quick, before we end, Aaron, you can jump off if you want. Caleb, I feel like now's a good point to where we can do a more in-depth Q&A. I know there were a few points that you had questions, but I think now would be a good time that we can further disseminate on them.
So welcome to
welcome to the new segment.
Yeah, welcome to the new segment. We're from the time when Iraq was the bastion of knowledge for Europe. Things you don't think would happen given the modern world.
Yeah, you guys actually did a really good job throughout the episode of explaining and answer my questions. I will say, the one question I had, when you talked of just about the rise and falls of just different academic schools and centers. So obviously, during this time, it's House of Wisdom. But after, what kind of takes the place in this vacuum of House of the Wisdom? Is it Toledo, or is there something else that we kind of see?
So with the House of Wisdom, we have Toledo sort of still carrying on to disseminate all this work into Europe. Once it gets into Europe, again, we have the printing press come along, and at that point, there is no longer, like, the way knowledge works is no longer single massive collection serving as the one storehouse for the entire empire. It is no longer, in order to have knowledge, we have to put all our eggs in one basket. Instead, we are able to mass produce books on a level where every other city can have a basket big enough to sustain us if, should, invasion, plague, fire wipe out one of the cities.
It is also during this point too, or very shortly after, that we do actually start seeing the establishment of upper education, higher education. There's the establishment of universities.
Yeah, the existence of universities really comes into play, especially in Europe, and I believe in Italy at first has some of the first universities in Europe, and then that sort of presses outward into France, what is now Poland, Germany, England. The English actually managed to sustain their universities the longest. Several universities, the universities that get established elsewhere, are closed and reopened, or new ones take their place. But the idea of higher education instead of just private tutoring also takes hold, and that also means that there are now more smart people, more educated people than there ever were before.
Which coincidentally led to a lot of better advancements. Aaron touched on the architecture, the design, the engineering. It's really kind of weird how these things correlate.
Yep.
But if you guys enjoyed watching today's episode, Please be sure to leave a like. If there's a topic you would like to see, drop a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future podcast episodes. And what is coming up next time, Colum?
So next time on our Historical Humans podcast, we will be talking about a man.
A man?
Yes, we're going to be talking about a single man. A man responsible for so much pain in the modern world. I, of course, mean none other than Saint Valentine, the man who lends his name to that day when all people in relationships are put under added stress, and anyone not in a relationship is made to feel horribly bad.
But on the plus side, there's lots of chocolate and candy.
The day after, I'll tell you what though, I'm gonna get into it. I'm gonna get fucking into it because that man has personally ruined my life. And I'll tell you why, because my birthday is 2 days after Valentine's Day. And if Valentine's Day falls on a Friday, whole weekend plans, I can't plan anything because everybody's like, I'm going to spend the whole weekend with my significant other. Nah, it's mine. It's mine. You get the one day.
Yeah, Aaron, listen, I'm not nearly as bitter, and I had Jesus do the same thing to me, so don't start.
You know, I had a fun day today making plans for my significant other. Like, I was like, oh, here's some things we can do. Why are you guys so angry?
Can we boot him from this for being
My first and last
academia
appearance.
This is academia. We're not supposed to be happy. We're supposed to be cantankerous.
Yeah, you have a birthday next to a holiday.
All right.
I do, Aaron. I do. My birthday is right next to Juneteenth. And I'm not going to complain about it. Goodbye, everyone. See you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.